Hi everyone, welcome to this new lecture of fluid mechanics. In this lecture, we'll discuss the concept of buoyancy and center of buoyancy. So buoyancy, I'll give you some examples so that easily you can understand the concept. Let me consider a container, and in this container, it is filled of some liquid is there. Okay, so this is the liquid layer, suppose, and inside this the liquid is present, and the liquid, let's consider it is water. Okay. Let's consider the liquid which is present inside this container, that is water. And in this liquid, let me throw one object, a solid object, okay, and which is in the floating condition, Actually, when you throw the object inside this liquid, okay, it is going to float, or it is going to maybe immerse inside the water. Okay, this body may be floating in that water, or it may be deep inside the water. Any condition may be possible. Okay, so it depends upon the what kind of object we are throwing to this liquid. Okay, now, so for both the conditions, there will be a force acting on this object due to this due to the water on the object, and the force always tries to make this object to lift upside. Okay, so that is the concept of buoyancy. Even for that condition, here also the force will be acting on this object, and here also the force which is acting on the object, it will always try to body to move upside. Okay, and that is the concept of buoyancy. And one more thing, for each body, for this one and for this one, we can say there is a self weight is there, and due to this weight, it is always tries to goes down, because due to the gravity, okay, it will be try to goes down. So here also will be the same. Okay, and this one we can write the weight of this body, and this is here also weight of the body, and the force, as I told you, which is acting on this object due to the fluid, and this is the concept of buoyancy. Due to the buoyancy, the force is acting on this object, and it tries to move upward, lift upside. Okay, so what we can write for the definition of this buoyancy? Okay, when the body, when the body is immersed in a liquid, write something. When the body is immersed in a liquid, in a fluid, this immersion part may be either it may be fully immersed or maybe partial. So we can write immersed in a fluid by partially, or it may be fully. It is subjected to an upward force. It is subjected to an upward force which tends to the body supposed to be lifted up. Okay, upward force which tends to lift the body upside. Okay, and the tendency, you can say the tendency, okay, for an immersed body, we can write the definition of buoyancy in such a way that the tendency of an immersed body to be lifted up, and in this fluid due to the upward force, okay, and which is opposite to the action of the gravity, okay, which is the opposite, you can say opposite to the action of gravity, is known as buoyancy. Okay, and this is about the buoyancy point. So what we can write about the force which is acting on this, I have mentioned this one B. So this buoyancy point, actually we can mark it, the denotation for this buoyancy is B, capital B used to mark for this buoyancy. And the force of buoyancy is actually nothing but the force that tending to lift up the body under this any conditions, okay, that is known as the buoyance force, or the force of buoyancy, or used to call it as a upthrust. Used to called as of thrust, or we used to call it as the force of buoyancy, which is denoted by FB, which is denoted by FB. Okay. So this is about the buoyancy and the force of buoyancy. Okay. Now, one more point is the center of buoyancy. So where the center of buoyancy will be exists. Now the center of buoyancy is nothing but the point through which, you can say, the point through which the force of buoyancy is supposed to act. That means the body, this is the partial part of this body which is present inside the fluid. So obviously there is a force of buoyancy which is acting on this object. So that force of body will be going to act on a particular point of this object. So let me consider a point here, and in this point the force of buoyancy is acting. So that point I can mark it as a center of buoyancy, as a center of buoyancy, or B point. For this object it will be different. It can take exactly in this middle of this point. Okay, so that is B point. Okay, so that is center of buoyancy, this one. Now for this object, any object, if you see, we have a center of gravity point. That means the total weight of the body existing at a particular point, so that is called a center of gravity point. So center of gravity point is not going to change for this object, whether it is fully immersed inside the liquid or maybe partially inside the liquid. So this point, exactly the center point of this body, is known as the center of gravity point of this object. Okay. Similarly, at this point, both G and B point will be it will be the same point. G and B, center of gravity point and center of buoyancy point, will be act on the same point. Okay. And for the partially body which is floating on this, so for this it will be different. G point and B point will be different. Okay. So this is the concept of, the buoyancy and center of buoyancy. Now, another one concept I'll tell you. So how to identify the force of buoyancy actually? Okay. So the force of buoyancy, what we have seen here, that how we can come to know that what is the force is acting on this object. Okay. So when you keep this object inside, this body inside, this is the body which you are kept inside this object. Okay. Due to this body, when it is going to inside, so few amount of water is going to come outside, because this container is already filled, and there is no space to allow any kind of object inside the liquid. But again, if you are going to put an object on this, so obviously the water which is present here, that is going to come outside. Okay. So the force of buoyancy, we can say the weight of the force of buoyancy equal to weight of the fluid, the weight of the fluid displaced. We can say the fluid which was displaced from this, okay, if you measure that one, so that weight will be equal to the force of buoyancy. Or also we can say that also equal to the weight of the body. Okay, so this is the force of buoyancy to calculate in this object. Again, one more concept also we got previously by the Archimedes principle, if you remember. So the water which displaced from this container due to this body, so that means the volume of water displaced from this container is equal to the volume of the body or volume of the object which is present inside the fluids. Okay, this is another one concept. So what is the volume of this object which is present inside the fluid, and what the water was displaced from this container, that volume, both should be equal. Okay, this two concept is there. Now one more thing, as I told you, one body is partially immersed inside the body, inside the fluid, and it is one more is fully inside the liquid. Okay, this concept actually, when the body is going to be partially floated on the body, now when the density of the body will be less than the density of the fluid. Okay, when the density of this object is going to less than the density of the fluid, then it is going to float on the body. If you take the example of wood or any thermocol type items or any floating items which is density is very small, or if you compare, the density of that object will be obviously less than the density of the fluid. Okay, similarly, when the object is going to fully inside the object, now when this object density is greater than the density of the fluid, then it is going to fully immerse inside the liquid. If you take the ball, the iron ball or any heavy metals kind of things, if you throw inside the liquid, obviously it's going to immersed, sink in the inside the water. Okay, so this is the concept of buoyancy and center of buoyancy, and the force of buoyancy and center of buoyancy of this, and the center of gravity. So I hope you understood how to understand the concept of this buoyancy and what is the center of buoyancy. So if you are having any kind of query regarding this or doubt regarding this, you can give a comment on the comment box. Thank you all.